this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is a video to compare two mice which I think are worth putting side by side and talking about the differences and similarities. This is the glorious Model I, which is obviously wired, and the Logitech G502 Lightspeed. Now the Lightspeed is a wireless mouse and considerably more expensive, but as you'll see from these shots and the comparison as we go through, they're both similar in sort of their shape, ergonomics, button logic, and other things. And I think the fact that the glorious Model I is so much more affordable and also really lightweight makes it appealing and perhaps an interesting alternative if you're considering the G502 but haven't wanted to spend that much money or want something which is a bit easier to handle. Now, as I revolve these mice around and show you the different angles of them, you'll notice the size similarities and the shape similarities and the overall design. Glorious has taken a tried and tested sort of ergonomic layout and put it into an affordable honeycomb lightweight mouse with 9 programmable buttons and an interesting spec. This goes up to 19,000 DPI, has 1000 Hertz polling rate, and also comparable specs in terms of speed and max acceleration, and I'll leave the specs in the description so you can compare them on paper. But in this video I'm going to be showing you the differences between them and talking about them as we go through, and obviously my experience. Now, I've unboxed and reviewed both these mice separately, and I'll also leave a sample of the sound test at the end so you can hear the differences between them. Naturally, they are quite different in a number of different ways. The glorious Model I is obviously a lot more flexible in terms of its agility on the desk. It is considerably lighter, and the G502 Lightspeed, however, is a heftier mouse, which I think feels a lot more premium. And that is one of the benefits of that device, is that you feel like you're getting what you're paying for because it has this really sort of solid build quality, a good look to it, a nice heft, and a number of other things. Now, the G502 has a lot more buttons, as we'll talk about as we'll go through, and there are 11 buttons in total on the G502 versus the 9 on the glorious Model I, but the layout makes them both interesting and comfortable to use depending on your personal preference. Now, the glorious Model I is meant to weigh in around 69 grams. I found mine realistically weighed about 71 or 72, so there is some variance there. But you'll see that the G502 goes all the way up to 131 grams, and that's with the various weights in place. So G502 Lightspeed has an adjustable weight system where you can basically choose to add in extra weights. There's 16 grams of extra weight included in the box in these little extra weights that you can just add in. So you get the choice to not only have a heavy mouse to begin with, but then to add in some extra weights and make it heavier and affect the balance and sort of the feel in the hand. And this was an interesting design. Obviously, this has been around for a while, and now everyone's going for lightweight mice instead of heavy ones. But if you're not bothered about weight and you don't think it has an impact on your performance, then the G502 is an interesting device. And I think, actually, as I said already, that weight makes it feel a bit more premium. However, what I will say is the glorious Model I is obviously very lightweight, but what it does is it delivers a nice solid frame that doesn't feel like they've cut down on the weight and therefore made the mouse feel cheap. So it doesn't feel really weak and plastic and nonsense and horrible in your hand. It is actually really affordable at $59 around there, and that is an appeal because it's obviously comparable in a number of ways to a much more expensive mouse. Now, the other thing about the glorious Model I that makes it interesting is that it has swappable buttons. So some of the side buttons are swappable. I said already that this has 9 programmable buttons, and you can see that you can customize the layout of the buttons, or at least the shape of them. So the sniper button, or the DPI lock as it's called, which is the front thumb button just above the thumb rest at the bottom, is a magnetic button that you can pull off. It does require quite a bit of force to get off. I had to use a little tool in order to pull it off there, so you won't accidentally pull it off or knock it off while you're playing, which is a bonus. And then you can just clip on a slightly different design. There are 2 buttons on the side which you are able to change. So that button, the DPI lock, and then the rear thumb button at the closest to the back of the mouse as well. You can customize the design of these, so change out from a couple of different options in the box for both, And you can also use a blanking plate to get rid of it if you wish, so you can completely blank it out and not use it. You also have the option to tweak, obviously, the button settings within the Glorious Core software, which I showed off in the review if you want to find out more. And you can also disable the buttons if you don't want to use them. What I found, though, is that the button layout in this is actually really nice. It has a really good fit in the hand, and because of the way the buttons lay out and the way they stick out, they're really easy to access. So it's really easy to be able to press any of those thumb buttons whenever you want. So you can set them up with whatever button press or logic or whatever you want to do. You can assign macros and other things, or just simple actions. And then you can obviously access them with ease, but you have the option to disable and blank them out if you want. Oddly, the front two you can't customize, so those aren't magnetic. I don't know why they didn't make them all like that, but that's one of the things to bear in mind. Now, one of the things that I also liked about this logic is those side buttons not only stick out really nicely, but they seem to be a really sort of good quality. When you press them, you get a nice satisfying click out of them, and the actuation on them is really good as well. Usually with gaming mice, in my experience, you find that the two main buttons, the left and right button, are the ones that have sort of been given the most attention, and then the side buttons are often an afterthought, and they don't feel as good in terms of the quality of the response and the click. I didn't find this to be the case with the Glorious Model I. I actually felt like the response from them was really nice. However, there is certainly a different sound from each of the buttons, and the feel of them, not necessarily a problem, but just something I thought it was worth noting. So you can see that these two mice are quite a bit different. Another thing about the G502 Lightspeed, for example, is that it's also customizable because it's usable with the Logitech Powerplay system. Powerplay is a powered mouse mat, which essentially allows you to swap out the standard little puck on the bottom of the G502 for one that allows you to then have pass-through power. So this mouse is now charging on the mouse mat, and basically you never need to plug it in, which is a bonus. Now that comes with a micro USB charging cable as standard, and you can get up to 60 hours of battery life out of it with the RGB lighting turned off. You'll note that only really the G logo is lit up with the RGB anyway, but you can get up to 48 hours with default lighting, so with that lighting turned on. Now, as I said earlier, I'm also going to include a sample of the click sounds at the end of this video, so stick with me to hear that if you want to sort of hear a comparison between the two. Logitech has classically used Omron switches in most of their mice for quite some time, whereas Glorious is using their own switches, which are rated up to 80 million clicks. I find both of them to be very responsive, and I've also enjoyed the G502 during my uses because I found the buttons are also very satisfying. There's a lot of really satisfying action out of the G502. It feels like a premium mouse, which is good because it is, and it is expensive, and it is also very angry looking, and there's a lot to like about it. As you might be aware already, the G502 not only has loads of programmable buttons, but also it has left and right click in the mouse wheel, as you'll see, and it also has an infinite spin on the mouse wheel. So there is a button behind the mouse wheel that you can press, which basically unlocks the mouse wheel. So as usual, you'll get that sort of feedback from it as you scroll the wheel, but you can also press that button and then it basically will go into a spin where you can keep spinning it, and it'll sort of spin loosely and in a really fast way, which is impressive and useful for various different reasons. So a bit more flexible in sort of the logic of how the buttons work, including that left and right click and the scroll wheel, and a little bit more going on with the G502 in terms of just general button goodness. However, I do think that the Glorious Model I is also interesting because, as I said, it has a similar shape, comparable specs, decent specs, satisfying button action, and obviously a lot of other things. There's DPI buttons on top at the rear. You'll also notice that it has a lot more in terms of RGB lighting. So there's 3 RGB lighting zones down the left and right and on the mouse wheel. And you'll see some of the various effects available in the software and if you watch the review. But I found that the lighting here is pretty satisfying, although it doesn't come through the honeycomb center, so you don't see it in the middle, but you do get a nice bit of a glow off the edge. Now, when I first got the Glorious Model I out of the box, I was immediately struck by the similarities to both the G502 and the Razer Basilisk Ultimate, so I may well do a comparison video with that in the near future as well, so subscribe if you aren't already and you're interested in seeing that. They are all 3 of them comparable in sort of their shape, size and fit in the hand. I feel like the Glorious Model I is a really nice size if you're looking for a mouse which is a little bit larger. If you have a larger hand or longer fingers, you'll find the Glorious Model I to be a fantastic fit. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what you think. Check out the description for more information and stick around now to hear the button test. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Hope you found this video useful, interesting, hilarious, or otherwise. Take a look at these other videos that I think you might find interesting as well. And have a look at the description for links and other information you might find useful. Click that join button to see the benefits of being a member of my YouTube channel. And most importantly, have a great life.